Hey folks, welcome to Pol Ke Bol. My name is Saurabh Pol. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Today I'm going to talk about why capitalism is losing its popularity in the West. And by the West, I mean US, UK, like Western Europe, North America, places like that, right? So essentially, capitalism came about in that region of the world and it spread across. And today, even me living in India, we are part of the globalized capitalist world. We have China, who used to be communist, by the way. Even right now, it's ruled by the CCCP, which is the Communist Party of China. But they are one of the leaders in the capitalist system that the entire world subscribes to. Even Russia, which used to be the Soviet Union not so long ago, 30 years ago, it used to be the Soviet Union. And which was the leader of the communist world. And communism was defeated with the fall of Soviet Union, and even they are part of the capitalist system, by the way. Until the war with Ukraine, right? I think there used to be McDonald's in Russia, and I think Russia was one of the top five markets in the world for McDonald's. That's how popular it was. So we live in a capitalist world, but in recent times, the West in particular, uh, they are losing uh, the battle to keep capitalism as its preferred choice of societal development, I would say. Its economic system. Capitalism, people say, oh, it's an economic system. I don't think so. It's an economic system. I think it's a way of life. Capitalism is a way of life, and everything, even the governments that you have, can be determined by what sort of a system that you have, right? It's more intertwined than what it once was. We were taught that, hey, there's a governmental system, like it could be, a democracy, a constitutional monarchy, a republic, straight up dictatorship, autocracy, and that's that. And within that also, you could have different economic systems. It could be capitalism, socialism, uh, you know, capitalism with distribution, with redistribution policies, like straight up overall collectivism and communism. It could be anything under all of that, right? Um, but I feel today capitalism has won so large, everyone, and won so bigly, uh, and won so thoroughly in the last 25, 30 years, is that more or less every country in this world is a capitalist country with shades of capitalism, right? Like their own interpretation of capitalism. The Chinese are not a socialist country. They have socialist elements to it, but they are a thoroughly capitalist country. I mean, the consumerism in China is incredible. It's not even funny. Okay, it's not even funny. You can ask the German car manufacturers and different German companies how important the Chinese market is to them. You can ask Hollywood how important the Chinese market is to them, right? So the Chinese are consumers. They're very much part of the communist capitalist society. They do have elements of communism over there, but that is more on a societal level, because they're like, hey, we believe in redistribution. We do believe in a heavier role of the government in running society, which is not the case in the US or in the UK, for that matter. Russia, on the other hand, is more like, hey, we have like the single leader who is the be all and end all, more or less, practically speaking. Of course, they do have elections, but Vladimir Putin is the man who runs Russia, right? And everyone else is like, it's a revolving door, like come and go. But Putin is the man who stays there. He's been there for the last 20 odd years in different capacities. But his system is also pretty capitalistic. Now you'll be like, oh, there is crony capitalism. Crony capitalism is everywhere, as I said, right? Oh, the Russians have oligarchs. Well, the Koreans have the chaebols, like or chaebols. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm so sorry. CHAEBOLS, right? The titans of the industry. In the US, in the late 1800s, they were called, which was the 19th century. They were called the robber barons. They were called the robber barons, who were the oligarchs that you had over there, the captains of industry, the titans of capitalism, which is how the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, obviously, and so on and so forth. And so this went on and on, and in India also you have capitalism, right? Like India is a capitalist country with, like, of course, the word socialist is there in our constitution. It was added very famously in the 1970s by Indira Gandhi. It was socialist and secular were not part of India's constitution when it was initially created. It was added later on. But having said that, you know India is also very much a capitalist country. It's I think we are the fifth largest economy in the world right now. We are trying to be like the third largest very soon. By very soon I mean 2030 or something. We are aiming to be the top three, number one being US and China. And so everyone is running their own version of capitalism, right? But India has incredibly strong redistribution systems, right? So what we are saying is, hey, we are India, we are a capitalist country, but whatever money we earn out of the capitalism and the trade and the globalization that we are part of, we are basically going to redistribute it, and we are going to allocate it, to different sections of society which the government deems important enough and crucial enough, strategically also, to be given that money, right? Like India has some incredible welfare programs, right? Like, which the audience of this YouTube channel, like Pol Ke Bol, I would say, the audience is typically urban, like maximum town level pe jayega mera content, right? So the people like you and me, we are not beneficiaries of the welfare policies of this government, more or less, right? But majority of the country is, right? We are still a poor country, like, let's be honest. And overall economy wise, because of the sheer numbers and strength, we are doing all right. But in terms of per capita income, India is horrible, right? Like, what, per capita income is still $2,500 or something of that sort. If you compare it to a Germany, they are at what, $60,000. So this is US dollars, right? Yeah, if you're going to do it via purchasing power parity, India fares a little better, but it's still not enough, right? We're a very poor country. And it's important to remember that, because for the sake of the conversation, it's important to remember that, because I'll get to that later. But so my point is, we are a capitalist country, and we have a different flavor of capitalism running around in India, right? People are like, oh, look at the Scandinavian countries. You have Sweden, you have Finland, and all these different countries like Norway. So those Scandinavian countries, they're like, oh, they are so rich, and they are socialist countries, that they don't have carnivorous capitalism going on over there. And I'm like, yeah, fair enough. Like, they're much more regulated, much better regulated, but they are also very much part of, um, the capitalist system. What they do very well is they take that money, they regulate the private companies, and they ensure that the welfare systems are very robust, right? Like, the healthcare is good, the education is free, the healthcare is free, and it is of top quality, right? Like, aisa nahi ki haan free hai but bakwas hai, like in India. So they have the money, they have the population for it. Our population is way too much. They can do it much better than us. The systems are much more mature. Their surroundings are much better than ours. They have only one or two problems around them, and they have the cover of the United States to protect them militarily, which India refuses to take for very good reason, frankly. We are too big for that, right? We are too big for that. The Scandinavians are not. The Scandinavians don't have to worry about the security now. They do, by the way. But more or less they know that they're part of NATO, and we are like, oh, nothing's gonna happen to us, more or less. And if it does, we have the world's biggest power to save us. So their capitalism is like, all the money that we get, we don't need to spend that much on the military. What we need to do is we can put it back into our welfare systems, right? So people are more or less happy over there. But now in recent years, right, like, so this is like, I've set up the base, I would say. Like, it took me almost 8 minutes to do that, but I wanted to dispel the myth that communism and socialism are very much, uh, like, there. And there's no, these countries are, all countries are capitalist, they just have a different flavor to them. Okay. Even the Middle Eastern countries, they have their own companies, their government owned companies, their public private partnerships and all, but they're very much part of the global capitalist system, and they're capitalist countries, right? And consumerism rules the roost everywhere in all major countries. Now, the point is, now this is why I want to dispel that myth, right? People are like, oh, there are communist countries, there are socialist countries. No, they are not. They're capitalist countries with different modes of operating. There are different flavors of capitalism that you have. अगर आप रेस्टोरेंट में चिकन मंगा रहे हो, चिकन टिक्का मंगा रहे हो, डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ कबाब्स यू आर ऑर्डरिंग, उसमें मीठा कबाब होता है, अफगानी कबाब होता है, देन उसमें चिकन टिक्का होता है, देन उसमें बंजारा होता है, डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ दे, बट दे आर ऑल कबाब्स. None of them are noodles, na? None of them are spaghetti. So we live in a kebab world. We live in a capitalist world, is what I'm trying to say. So coming back, um, now that I've established that, right? But in recent years, what has happened is, in the last decade or so, capitalism as an entity, as a system, uh, the perception has gone down big time, right? Like, especially in the West, most of us, not us, most of their youth, especially very concerned. This is concerning, right? They consider capitalism to not be for the greater good, right? They feel net it's bad. And they if they only think from their perspective, they would be 100% right. They think capitalism doesn't serve societal good. It should be done away with, and we should all become socialists, because that's a much more moral way of living, right? Now, why do they think the way they do, right? It's very simple, I would say. Uh, Not very simple, but it's obvious, not simple, obvious. So in 2008, there was this global financial crisis. You have all these banks in the US on Wall Street who made mistakes, and instead of letting them fail and the economy taking a hit, the Bush administration in 2007-8, they decided to let them get away with it, right? They basically bailed them out, and the bail them out is very simple. There were huge losses. If these losses weren't covered, these companies would fail, Wall Street would fail, the economy of the world would be impacted. So instead, they thought, we are going to use US taxpayer money to basically pay off their losses and ensure that these companies survive and they do well. And one or two companies were let to go to waste. Obviously, Lehman Brothers is the first one, and they realized, okay, we can't do this. It was a game of bluff, probably, I would say, with Wall Street, and the US government was like, okay, we are not going to continue with this, and they plugged the hole with money from the US taxpayers. The housing crisis was caused because of that, and many people lost their homes. They lost their life savings because of it. Pensions were gone, and because of that, there was this movement which came about, which was called Occupy Wall Street. That movement lasted for a year or two maximum, and it kind of fizzled out, right? Uh, and there are many theories as to why it fizzled out, but what is more important is, for the sake of this video, is that that is when people realize that there are rules for me, not for thee. They were like कि यार, ये जो बड़े लोग हैं, ये पैसा कमाते हैं, अच्छी बात है, बट ये जब गवाते हैं तो, मतलब जब पैसा कमाते हैं खुद के पास रखते हैं, जब पैसा गवाते हैं तो यार, वी हैव टू पे फॉर द लॉसेस. दिस इज रॉन्ग, ये गलत है. So this is what has happened, right? And they saw it, and because of that, the economy kind of took a hit. And in places like the UK, they were richer in 2008 than they are now, right? Like Portugal, Italy, Greece, Spain. These countries were all richer in 2008 than they are now. So it's been what, 16 years since 2008, and there hasn't been real wage growth. Now, obviously, their wages, if they were 100, like assume, take a number. If it was 100, their wages, average wage, today it has become 200, right? So you're like, oh, they got double ho gaya. But kharcha bhi to bada. So real wage growth is the purchasing power of your wages, right? And that hasn't happened for them. They are poorer than they were before, not only as a country, right? Like even as a, I would say, like people, right? Even as people, their GDPs might have grown, or they have stagnated, but overall, the life of an average Englishman has not improved. In fact, it has gone down. What's even worse, in fact, in certain parts of even US, is that while the real wage growth hasn't really happened, the minimum wage growth hasn't happened, even the growth, if it has happened, inflation has eaten away at it. What has happened is, they have realized for the first time ever that their kids are not going to have a better life than they did, because they had a better life than their parents, right? Now, these people are like, my kids are never going to have a better life. More importantly, what used to happen was, back in the day, people used to get 20, 25, they used to get married, they used to have kids. Average marriage age was 21, 22 in the US, in the 30s and 40s. Kept growing, became 25 and all of that. Even till the 70s, the average married couple was, the first time someone got married, the age that people got married was 25 or so, right? And then it kind of started increasing. Now it is in the 30s. The 32, 33 is the age when people are getting married in the US, right? Now that's not a small shift, right? I'll give you another statistic. uh, in the US, the median age of a person, of a homeowner, is 57, which is fine, right? People grow older, they get money and they earn money and they basically invest it in property, which makes sense, which is homes, right? Houses. But the first time someone buys a property, when that was that age, first home purchase, it used to be 28, like 20, 10 years ago or something of that sort. Today it is 34. It used to be even 24 even before. So 24 था जब आप पहले घर खरीदते थे, आपकी उम्र 24 थी ऑन एन एवरेज, फिर 28 हो गई, आज वो 34 हो गई है, and it is going to 36, 38. Sorry. So what you need to realize is, when people were youngish, when they're in their 20s, they used to get their own homes. कि market में पैसा था and you could take a loan which wouldn't, screw you up, a loan or a mortgage, whatever you want to call it. But now it has become so that, यार मैं लोन ले ही नहीं सकता, ये घर खरीद ही नहीं सकता, मैं जिंदगी भर रेंट करता रहूंगा. So they are called perpetual renters, and they are like, because the homes are unaffordable. Now, what are the reasons behind that? Corporations are buying homes, private equities are buying homes in bulk. Old people have homes and they are not going to sell it for a smaller, number. And not just that, old people are living longer, so their properties are also not being, shared down. So that's third. Fourth one is, some people are also blaming that, hey, and this is happening across New York, Lisbon in Portugal, and you have in Madrid, Spain, Barcelona, and France also, by the way, huge complaints that like companies, if there is any short-term rental or something, if you are giving it out for short-term rental to tourists or to digital nomads, people who go and work for 3 months, 6 months in a place and who are not from there, and these people are ready to pay because they are foreigners and they can come here in my market and take up space, but I can't buy it where I'm born. So I'm going to constantly rent. If at all I buy something, it's at a huge interest rate. I'm not able to pay it off. मैं जिंदगी भर I'm in debt. Okay, so that's four, I guess. And the last one I would say is loans that these people take for education. In the West, education is expensive. Unlike India, like India, there are a lot of things to complain about our education system. But boss, if you look at the education system in the West, the quality is top notch, but it's expensive as hell. It used to cost like $30,000-$40,000 in the 1970s, 80s. Today it is $250,000, $300,000. It's become 10x. For what? And these people get loans, like education loans, like by the time they're 21, 22, they go out in the market and they are down $250,000. ये लोग का करोड़ों का लोन रहता है इनके सिर पे, and they are like, when am I going to pay this off? And this is just the education loan, mind you. उसके बाद then you have your home loan लेना है, गाड़ी का loan लेना है, and all of that, and credit card, your lifestyle and everything. That's insane. Dude, I can understand if you're going to complain and say, अरे credit card में खर्चा करना बंद करवाना हो रे बाबा, but education का इतना loan क्यों है? Shouldn't the education be subsidized? So people are saying, the system is not working for me. मैं घर टाइम पे नहीं ले पा रहा हूँ, मैं जब जॉब में जा रहा हूँ मेरा रियल वेज ग्रोथ नहीं हो रहा है, and when I'm out of college, I'm already having a loan. Okay, प्लस मेरा वो मेडिकल अगर कुछ हो गया तो उधर मेडिकल का तो इशू फुल ऑन चालू रहता है. इंडिया में मेडिसिन सो सब्सिडाइज्ड, you guys have no clue. Okay, do a little bit of research, maybe I'll make a video on that. Okay, like medicine, they go into medical debt over there. Okay, in India at least you have that option that you can choose. Okay, sasta medication, okay, medium medication, medical services, like extremely expensive medical services, जिसको जो जमता है वो जाके करो. गवर्नमेंट हॉस्पिटल में जाओ, वहाँ पे मतलब ऑलमोस्ट फ्री में मिलता है, बट ऑफ कोर्स they are not of the best quality, right? Because as I said, we are a poor country, but at least you have those options. वहाँ पे option नहीं है भाई, people go into debt and all. It's very bad. It's very bad over there. In the US at least, right? But then you compare it to the UK, which has its NHS, which is National Health Service. You go over there and you take a week or two to even get some appointment. You are only getting medical attention if you go to the ER, which is the emergency room, right? Like so emergency है तो ही तुमको ऐसा ये मिलेगा, नहीं तो 2 हफ्ते बाद they'll call you for something of that sort. So while it is subsidized or completely free in Canada and the UK and other parts of Europe, there's always a waiting line. So these people are unhappy. The young people are especially unhappy कि यार मुझे घर नहीं मिल रहा है, मुझे पैसे नहीं मिल रहे हैं. ओके, मुझे जॉब्स का भी कभी कभार इशू हो जाता है, और मिल जाता है तो पैसे ज़्यादा ग्रो नहीं हो रहा है मेरा. हेल्थ केयर में तुम मेरी वाट लगा रहे हो. यार बचा क्या मेरी लाइफ में? तुम क्या कर रहे हो? हु आर यू सर्विंग? Then you have to ask the politicians, who the hell are you serving? I'll not even go into immigration, right? That's another dangerous thing, which is defining the futures of certain countries, honestly, in the sense that almost every election in the West has a huge issue of immigration that is being discussed. Donald Trump has been talking about it since 2016. The UK has its own challenge with immigration, especially illegal immigration, right? Let's not go into just normal immigration. Let's not do that. People are fine with immigration because it has, legal immigration has lots of rules and regulations. But if you look at illegal immigration, that's causing a huge problem. That depresses wages also, by the way. So many of these like young people, they're like, we'll join a union and all, no? वो union बाजी कर रहे हैं वहाँ पे. So they're like union करेंगे. अभी just today's news, Starbucks का union in the US, I think they went on strike or something. And then so these are huge challenges. Can you see, why will capitalism work for them? Why will they support capitalism? What has capitalism ever done for them, right? So this is why capitalism is losing its sheen in the West. And very quickly, like the older generations genuinely need to uh, address this in the West, because whatever happens in the West deeply affects us in the East. Okay, you'll be like, अरे तेरे को क्या फर्क पड़ रहा है, उनके साथ क्या हो रहा है? मतलब bro, like, grow up a little, get out of your local mentality, think global a little. Whatever happens in the West is bound to affect in the East. Okay, we are on this website right now, which is made in the West. We wear Western clothes, we speak Western languages. Okay, we work for Western companies, we deal with Western customers and partners. Okay, it is in our best interest that good things happen to them. It's our best interest that they are stable and prospering. So use some common sense. And cultural victory of the West is not even funny, right? We watch their shows, we talk their talk, okay? We speak their languages and everything. So I mean, please, man, like, let's relax a little bit. Like, we'll do well as a country, no doubt, but now is the time to actually be rational about it, right? And why I say this is capitalism. We were a socialist country for like good 50, 60 years post independence. It made a lot of sense to be socialist back then because we were reeling from centuries of subjugation and colonialism, not just from Britain, right, but also the invasion by the Mughals and the rule by the Mughals, right? We had lost our country for hundreds of years, like for half a millennia we had lost our country. Now we got it back. We are like, okay, abhi, we couldn't invite capitalists. Okay, let's not forget, India was conquered not by a country. It was conquered by the East India Company, which was a multinational corporation. Let's not forget. And the only reason they were taken out was in 1857, after the revolt of 1857, or the first battle of independence of 1857, whatever you want to call it. So India had a very bad like experience with trade, capitalist countries. So they were like, okay, we are our leaders at that time decided that let's focus internally, let's follow Keynesian economics, and let's have a socialist model. And we were a little bit more on the side of like Soviet Russia, which kind of made sense, which was USSR back then. And it made sense for the first 10, 15, 20 years. Then we should have gotten into so who else was very much pro USSR? Mao Zedong's China. But they were smarter than us and our leaders, and they were like, within first 20 years they realized, by the 1960s, 70s, they realized, ये नहीं हो रहा है भाई, इनका system खराब है, इनका system fail है, we have to adapt. Which is what India is very bad at, right? We're horrible at adapting. We can't steer the ship around quickly enough, which the Chinese are very good at. So they are like, boy, they realized key. And same size countries, right? India was more prosperous than the Chinese, by the way, who themselves had their own century of humiliation, from various different powers, right? Like, not just from the West, even from Japan. Like, they had a horrible time. Like, we'll go into that later, right? But ऐसा नहीं है कि भाई हमने ही मार खाया. Like, उन्होंने भी किया, उन्होंने भी बहुत सफर किया है. ठीक है, every country in its past has suffered, including the West, by the way, if you read a bit of history. So that's humanity, right? We have done well at times, we have done bad at times, right? So coming back, the Chinese realized in the 1960s and 70s कि bro, ये नहीं हो रहा है, ये खराब है, ये communism वगैरह नहीं चलने वाला. And they quickly adapted, and they shook hands with the US in the 1970s with Richard Nixon. And they got some very good leaders in Deng Xiaoping in the 1980s. And they are like, we are going full-fledged uh, capitalism, and we of course have a veneer of socialism and elements of socialism like redistribution policies and all of that, right? And equitable growth and all of that. But and they clearly succeeded. They are the second most powerful country in the world right now, and one of the most influential countries in the world right now. No one can stand in front of them other than the US, frankly, right? So, which shows how much they succeeded. And they use capitalism to do it, mind you. But they had their own version of capitalism with guardrails, which I think even India has. But I think our guardrails are much more pronounced than our capitalism, which is always a challenge in this country, right? Because even today, our main politician, like our main opposition politician, which is Mr. Rahul Gandhi, he keeps accusing the government of being friends with crony capitalists like Gautam Adani. Right? As per him, they're crony capitalists, right? And until 2 years ago, it was Adani, Ambani, Adani, and pura time gali dete rehte hain. So in India, being allied with a capitalist, with a titan of the industry, is considered a bad thing. We are never going to succeed if capitalism is considered a bad word in this country, right? So we do have some very bad things in this country going on, but capitalism is not one of them. I think hundreds of millions of people have been brought out of poverty and into prosperity in this country because of capitalism. Okay, my father was one of them, is one of them, rather. Okay, and my entire family, I would say, we have benefited immensely because of it, and I recognize that privilege. I'm able to do this because of capitalism. Okay, but I also acknowledge that capitalism has caused huge income inequality in this country, which if you think about it, it was like, okay, everyone is always poor. Some people got money, so some people are still poor. So we need to bring these people up, right? People who are like poor, we need to bring them up, right? So that is what I think the government is trying to do with its redistribution policies. But redistribution is like plugging a gap. What are we doing to raise them? So if I knew that, I would be sitting in Delhi, but I do not. So I hope Modi ji and his friends figure it out. People who we have voted for figure it out. So anyway, I believe capitalism is the way to go, but I can completely understand if someone is disillusioned, especially people in the West, right? At least in India, of course, India has its own crony capitalists, right? Like you have so many cases like people, the government of India has accused Vijay Mallya of being a crony capitalist. It has accused Nirav Modi of it, Mehul Choksi of it, and those people are not in India anymore, right? They are in different parts of the world and they are contesting it. Like the government has accused them of it, so you have to be very careful of accusing them. So that's my point. That's my main point, right? Like capitalism can only work if crony capitalists are actually punished, if that system actually helps the lower end of society rise up, which it has done in India and China, mind you. It used to do in the US, because now they feel there is no upward social mobility, and it can only work if it is an honest version of itself, because right now there are elements of capitalism that have just gone haywire, and that's not good, not just for the West, but also for the world, for that matter, because it is in the world's best interest that capitalism reforms itself and capitalism accepts that there's something wrong with it, and the leaders of our capitalist society, they acknowledge that something needs to change, and that's how, and there needs to be some compromise. You can't have like that system working only for a few wealthy elite all the time. They can't keep getting away with it, right? So I mean, the best example would be Luigi Mangione. Okay, there's this guy. Okay, Google it, but I'll explain. United Healthcare. It is the biggest insurance company in the US. I think in the US it's the 8th biggest company in terms of pure revenue, right? It's huge. Their CEO was walking on the streets of New York, attending a meeting, an investor meet, 6 a.m. in Manhattan, New York, which is like Kolaba in Mumbai. Okay, this dude is walking over there. He's going into a hotel. This one dude, 26-year-old guy, comes and shoots him dead on the spot. That's a goli marta. He's made that gun. He's 3D printed that gun and all of that, and he runs away. He gets caught like in a week or two. The New York police has now extradition. I'll get this right. The New York police has extradited. Okay, I'll do it next time. So New York police has extradited him. Okay, extradited. The New York police has extradited him back to New York, and they made him do a perp walk. Basically उसको arrest किया, बोला कि तू चोर है and तूने murder किया है, and they are putting a terrorism charge on him. He's a guy who shot a CEO. Why is he given a terrorism charge? Because if you do a terrorism charge, you don't need a jury. So they have a jury system in the US, right? The challenge with the case is the people in the US, they're very worried, are supporting Luigi Mangione, who is an assassin who killed the CEO of one of the biggest companies in the US. So there's so much anger in the capitalist system, where they are like, ki, acha kiya isko maar ke. That's what they are talking about. Just open Twitter, see what people are talking about it. You can see, like, the authorities are worried that there is way too much sympathy for the assassin. Now that is a bad sign. So I hope in the future, when something like this happens, which I hope it doesn't, but if it does, there isn't sympathy for the killer. If there is sympathy for the killer, we need to ask ourselves, why is this happening? The capitalist system needs to reform. And this is one of the best examples of why it needs to reform. Because when people are sympathizing with assassins, revolution is not far away. That's all I'll say. This was Polkeball. I hope we all enter into a better future. Thank you.